What's up, Womack Nostalgia? Dave here in our podcast. What's going on in pop culture right now? Got a long one this week with a lot of things to talk about. Movie front, Wes Anderson's The Phoenician Scheme, John Wick spinoff Ballerina, animated Predator film Predator Killer of Killers on Hulu, and then a ton of music. Kiss of Life, ITZY, Enhypen, Little Simz, and against all odds, Addison Rae. So make sure you subscribe. YouTube.com/nostalgiapod, Linktree.com/nostalgiapod. See the links below. Get the best of 2025 Spotify playlist linked below. Let me know it's good and let's get into it. What's up, Womack Nostalgia? Dave here with a review of Addison Rae's debut album, Addison. Crazy that we're talking about an Addison Rae record with honestly serious thoughts, because obviously Addison Rae came up as one of the biggest faces of early TikTok 1.0, big star of pandemic TikTok specifically. I mean, even now, I believe she's in the top 10 most followed accounts on Spotify, most followed people on Spotify. Still a massive star on the platform. But of course, several years ago, she first started, branching out beyond just dance challenges and whatnot. And she's talked a lot about her strategic approach to building a career for herself in the promotion of this album, and speaking with a lot of tact and intention for sure, which I think is pretty admirable. But she released that song Obsessed a few years back, which definitely had some pop credibility to it, and I think that put some people on to maybe there was something more under the hood. And of course, she worked with some well-liked people, Charlie XCX, Arca. She was on the Brat remix album from Charlie, on the Von Dutch remix specifically. She's been in a very private relationship with Omer Fedi, who of course is one of the most significant songwriters and producers in pop today. So everything's kind of been boiling up to the musical moment, which of course took off in earnest. Obsessed was a minor hit, but it took off in earnest last August when Diet Pepsi came out, which found massive virality and is approaching 400 million streams on Spotify. And that's a song with, a great bridge, a catchy chorus, just, glitzy synths. And I think the proof of concept was realized at that point. And now we're at the debut album. Addison Rae's debut album, Addison, is significantly better than I think anyone would have expected. At the end of the day, Addison is working with great songwriters and is proving to be a strong songwriter in her own regard, having co-written every song on this album. She knows her vocal strengths. No one would mistake her for Ariana Grande with the pipes. But the mixing on this album really elevates her cadence and her inflections. And yes, is this produced? Is it auto-tuned? Is it light on its feet intentionally? Of course. I don't think this is going to wow people to the degree that a lot of the pop records from last summer did. But I do think there's a lot of just appealing, commendable, quality pop convention on this album. Diet Pepsi will be the biggest hit off the record, but there's just lots of smart, tight hooks, fun lyrics that are going to keep people coming back to the music. And honestly, hats off to her for really making this new lane happen. I think it's pretty impressive. Going through the music, again, apart from Diet Pepsi, right off the bat, you have the song New York, which is just a house song. Money is Everything. I think that song is amusing because she name drops all those other pop stars there. You have these big bass drops. Aquamarine, the single from last year as well, another house track that just has a great groove, and like you're just down to vibe. It doesn't really matter who's singing the song at that point. It sounds cool. I think High Fashion, one of the highlights again for sure. I really enjoy those snaps, but the chorus on this song just goes. Like, it just is what it is. It's a really catchy, pleasurable song. I think Fame is a Gun, another song that really moves. Times Like These, very vibey. Headphones On, another one, big highlight. I mean, there's some tracks here, And I think the biggest thing that'll be the demarcation point with this album for people is what they think of Addison's vocals. Because again, she's not like a spectacular singer, but if she can find herself into becoming, and she's proven it with this album, seeing how it sustains, if she can just continue to be a pretty capable pop songwriter. In terms of like low stakes pop, I don't think anyone's expecting like a Lana Del Rey-esque treatise or anything like that from Addison. But these are, kind of fun vanilla type records with enough personality still imbued into the lyrics that I think it has a lot more of a broad appeal than you would have ever expected. I'm as shocked as, most people are with this. And now I'm just very curious about, well, what is the ceiling? How far does this go? We already saw how big Diet Pepsi was after all. But like, what's next? Like, will this be an album that stays in the top 10 all summer, right? Is this like our soft equivalent of the Sabrina Carpenter record this year? Not to compare their artistry at all, but like, is that the placement of this music this time around in this cycle? Is that where we're at with this? It's in play, and I didn't think it was in play last week. So, hey, shout out Addison Rae. Let me know, though, what did you think of her debut album, Addison? What was your favorite song on it? Let me know. And for more music reviews, subscribe. And I'll see you next time. What's up, Womack Nostalgia? Dave here with a review of Little Simz' 6th album, Lotus. Little Simz, at this point, I think, has earned a reputation as one of the best rap storytellers in the UK. I think her really only peer in this department at this stage is Dave, of course. And Simz, this is her first proper album since 2022. She did release the Drop 7 EP since then. But she's been on, quite the album grind. And of course, Little Simz has been incredibly celebrated at this point, 2 albums ago, winning the Mercury Prize over in the UK. I think people know the reputation at this point. Little Simz' 6th album, Lotus, is another great record from the British rapper. Simply put, there is deep, introspective storytelling on this album. I think one of the best songs Simz has ever made is on this album, In Blood, an incredible back and forth storytelling song with her brother. Deeply personal, soul-bearing music. I think at some points, some songs, maybe they can feel a bit dense at times in terms of really trying to grapple with the lyrics, but there's lots of fun production choices and different, kind of bits of genre flair that you find on Lotus. And I think that's what makes this an impressive record overall, is because Simz is really continuing to grow and evolve with her overall sound while not compromising any of her core, rapping ability and rapping interests, which of course, again, is that storytelling, is that, impactful music. And yeah, if you're not on board at this point, I don't know what you're waiting for. And I'll admit, I think sometimes the music is even dense for me. I think the really, in-depth, several verse long storytelling record is not something I often listen to, so it really depends on how it's going. But there's a few songs that really jumped out to me on this record. I think Thief is a great one. I love the drums, very tight flow from Simbi. And the chorus has that awesome onomatopoeia. It really works. I love the enunciation of thief at that moment. The beat's just big time at that point, and it's a storytelling song at the end of the day. So there's some substance to it there. Lion, another highlight for me. Very jazzy, nice saxophone present. A lot of percussion as well that fuels the song. Oben Yair, saying that right, on the chorus is very nice contrast to Simz' vocals, and he's on the outro as well. Enough, another highlight for me. I love the snare, a little bit of xylophone, I believe, as well. Sounds very nice. The tempo, I love the way it kind of picks back up just a little bit after 10 seconds into the start of the song. And Simz, in terms of her flow, she's just floating on this song. She sounds tremendous. And then the feature, Yakimi, I love the "Don't Make Me Pull the Plug," that vocal line just really hits. I think the song overall just really makes you move. Again, this is, I think, an example of a song that she maybe didn't have in her bag, a few years ago, but now she can do it. And of course, I mentioned Blood, which I think production-wise, just a simple snare, just a little bit of piano. But again, that back and forth about her and her brother talking about their lives and their family, their relationship with their mother and stuff. It's one of the most impressive bits of, like I said, soul bearing, bits of opening yourself up to the audience that I've heard on a rap song in some time. I thought that was a real knockout track, and probably will make my top 10 songs of the year if that ended today. I was really impressed by it. But yeah, Lotus, I think there's a lot of other good songs on there. Those are just the key highlights for me. What was your favorite song? Let me know. And for more rap reviews, more music reviews, subscribe. And I'll see you next time. What's up, Womack Nostalgia? Dave here with the review of Enhypen's 6th EP, Desire Unleashed. Enhypen, at this point is an absolutely massive K-pop group. They just performed at Coachella, about to go on their 4th United States tour, of which they're doing arenas. They're about to embark on their first arena tour in Europe. Clearly one of the standard bearers of male K-pop, especially amidst the BTS hiatus. These guys are massive, about 5 years into the game at this point. And, despite all that, I've been kind of up and down with their music just because they really shift what they're going for. They have a lot of deep storytelling and lyrical lore in terms of the concept of the stories they're trying to tell with the music. I've found it pretty up and down, although I'm a massive fan of one of, if not their biggest song, Bite Me. Since then, though, I haven't had as much I've been interested in, but this latest EP certainly changes that. Enhypen's 6th EP, Desire Unleash, is my favorite project from them and has my favorite songs from the group since they released Bite Me. There's a good amount of variety on this EP, but more than anything, the energy level and the interest that these songs hold to the listener is very impressive. I quite enjoyed the song Bad Desire, With or Without You. A really fun use of auto-tune, great melody on that chorus. It has a simple hook, but the drums really propel this song, and I think the use of auto-tune electronically augmenting the song, I think it really holds your attention and keeps the song moving. It's pretty cool. Outside is Enhypen's first true dedicated rap song, and I think it's very successful. This is a hard-ass song. I love that brief call and response moment. The next verse, they drop in some auto-tune to really kind of switch it up for you. I think it's just a massive vibe shift. I really enjoy the song. And the mix also really makes it pop. A 3 6 Mafia Stay Fly sample to top it all off as well. We Be Outside hook, maybe it's a bit thin, but I think overall, the energy level, the aggression, the cadence is pretty successful. It's pretty engaging. And despite that fact that Enhypen haven't really been much in the way of rap as far as K-pop goes, there've been some moments here and there. This doesn't feel inauthentic. They seem kind of right at home with this. I'd be curious to see if they go down this road more. Again, they really like to kind of do it anything and everything when it comes to their music, so they'll probably continue to jump around. The first song, Flashover, has kind of a house rhythm, a lot of almost feels like live mixing, distortion going on. Not the biggest fan of the song, but it is a bit more interesting than a typical intro, I would say. My least favorite song here would be Loose, which is a complete shift from everything we've heard to that point. And almost a throwback, show tune vibe, a bit funky. I think the song's fine, it's pleasant, but it just is way less interesting and is a lot simpler than everything else. That just really kind of takes you down a notch from everything else you heard at that point. Helium brings the tempo back. The drums are very quick. I do think the chorus though is maybe a little bit busy, a little bit too much going on. And then lastly, Too Close. I think this song is really playful, good hook. I love the way the keys are kind of jumping around. Again, kind of a fun beat to be with. And then, of course, you have the 2 unnecessary English versions of Bad Desire and Loose to end it. But Enhypen, they gave us the full-length album. Was it Romance Untold last year? I believe it was their second full-length. And that was all right, But I think it just comes down to the songs and the choices they make. Because on a project like this, on a project like Desire Unleash, there is, I think, a lot of interesting choices here, and it's production choices, it's presentation. Enhypen, not master vocalists. They're not gonna be the guys to belt out these crazy notes or anything like that. They're more performance focused as a group, and I think that works when you have the music under them, as interesting as it is on this project. So. Definitely a fan of this. I think it's one of my favorite male K-pop releases of the year thus far. Let me know, though, what'd you think of Enhypen's 6th EP, Desire Unleash? What was your favorite song? Let me know. And for more music reviews, more K-pop reviews, subscribe. And I'll see you next time. What's up, Womack Nostalgia? Dave here with a review of ITZY's 10th EP, Girls Will Be Girls. ITZY has largely struggled with consistency release to release, but I think their 10th EP, Girls Will Be Girls, is one of their strongest in some time. This is interesting. It is experimental and holds your attention despite a short runtime. This feels like ITZY largely iterating on the success of Born to Be and looking beyond the relative failure of Gold. The music is very energetic. There's rock influences. There's electro house. It's really doing a lot, and I think it's a great showcase of modern day K-pop maximalism, which is great because we often get so much staid Western leaning pop these days from K-pop, so it's a welcome change. Member Leah also made a big impression vocally in ways I wasn't expecting, which is awesome given the hiatus she had taken from the group. Track 1, Girls Will Be Girls, very energetic verses. I thought Leah and Rujin in particular on those verses really jumped out. Kiss and Tell, definitely an electro house song. This is pretty cool. Honestly, the bass is bumping. These verses are fast. I think it's a great fit for ITZY. You know, I think ITZY has maybe alluded to stuff like this on some of their Japanese songs, and I found their Japanese output to largely be excellent, even though it doesn't get quite the same attention as their Korean music does, unsurprisingly. But they've always been great at this type of stuff, and it's cool to hear it, like them really diving in on a song like this. Locked and Loaded, this one's interesting because it's a downshift in the sense that it's not a house song anymore, but the energy still stays very high on these verses. You have this guitar and these like distorted drums on the chorus. Yeji, unsurprisingly, very powerful with her singing. The second verse, though, Leah and Yuna are spazzing. You know, when I first heard it, I thought it was just Yuna, but I was surprised to hear Leah basically doing rap. As far as ITZY's style of it goes, I thought it was awesome. And then you have this guitar solo outro, which is very big, unsurprisingly. Promise, I think the keys sound good on this. You also get some kick drum. It's definitely a slower track, but it almost reminded me of like a Disney song, but like in a good way. Like this is the song the town folk would be singing during the dance number in the movie. Never thought I'd say that about an ITZY track. And then the last song, Walk, electro again. I think the repetitiveness of the chorus is very unspectacular. That's also the problem with the track Girls Will Be Girls. Like if you just had better hooks on those two songs, they'd be even better. But still, Walk, the energy is very high. We're bouncing on the beat with these verses. I think the airy, like breathy vocals, not my favorite overall. But this is a good example of, you know, Rujin's like classic like attitude, personality that you hear from her. So yeah, only 5 songs. I think this type of sound from ITZY is ripe for a full-length album, and I think, you know, they've been experimenting, doing all kinds of stuff and trying to pick up the pieces and find some momentum, right? There's been releases that have been to varying degrees of rejected or just not as big as their early days, right? Stuff like you know, the Sneakers era, Cake era, Gold, you know, there's been ups and downs, but like I think if ITZY leaned into this, I think this is kind of bearing the fruit of a lot of their experimentation and genre choices, because I think they all really pop on this, and it's an interesting production. Vocally, it really grabs you, and I think this is what I want to hear from them. You know, I don't want to hear stuff like Imaginary Friend. I think this is them at their best, and this is the type of sound that will make them stand out amidst the, you know, high hegemony that we're in the middle of right now with K-pop. So I'm rooting for this to continue. Let me know though, what'd you think of ITZY's 10th EP, Girls Will Be Girls? What was your favorite song? And for more music reviews, more K-pop reviews, subscribe. And I'll see you next time. What's up, Womack Nostalgia? Dave here with the review of Kiss of Life's 4th EP, 224. Kiss of Life, one of the rapidly rising K-pop groups in recent memory. By my count, they had the 2nd best year in the genre last year, behind aespa. Great success. I actually saw them live, which I enjoyed quite a bit last fall. They also have gotten, I think, a lot of virality for a very sexual forward image and energy. Also finding all that success on S2 Entertainment, a smaller label, which is always great to see. However, all of that momentum and goodwill has seemingly screeched to a halt following an ill-begotten live stream a few weeks ago, where the group was very clearly and seemingly obliviously playing into Black and Latino stereotypes and prejudices. And not that controversy, particularly racial controversy, is new in the K-pop industry. It certainly isn't, whether you're talking about musical influences or styling choices, things like that. Not to rehash any of that. However, Belle and Julie of Kiss of Life are both American. They should be a lot more aware of these sensitivities. There really was no excuse for this sort of thing in 2025, and it left a lot of people with a bad taste in their mouth, to the point that Kiss of Life dropped out of KCON LA, which is very notable. The May 7th single, Live, Laugh, Love, came and went, got very little traction, and talk about a self-own, to say the least, not to mention a slap in the face to many of their fans across the world. Now the question remains, can Kiss of Life bounce back? Will they move forward from this? And obviously there's going to be attention on their music, but I think the question is if they'll be able to reach the old heights again. And what that'll really come down to, whether it's right or wrong, what that'll really come down to, more so than whether they really reckon with the problems in a more satisfying manner than what they've said before, which has been very insignificant. Ultimately, what will determine this is how strong the music that follows is. People are a lot more forgiving when they're liking the output. Kiss of Life's fourth EP, 224, is a largely mid-tempo R&B record. I was not expecting this level of vibe shift, and you could say it's more mature music, I suppose, but I find it less interesting than their past albums, to the point where I'm not hearing an Igloo or a Midas Touch on 224. I don't think there's a big hit on here. I think my favorite song, Slide, stands out because it has a lot of the Kiss of Life personality and musical touches and trademarks. That those trademarks are most noticeable on that song. A lot of the other songs, though, come across a lot more anonymous vocally, where the Kiss of Life, personality and those tics just doesn't really come through. Like the lead single, Lips, Hips, Kiss, I don't really hear anything that makes that sound like a Kiss of Life song. I think that's pretty boilerplate overall. So this is definitely a project to me that I don't know if it's going to do a whole lot to really change the mood around this group. And I think the pressure will return to Kiss of Life to really reckon with the controversy in a meaningful way, because they're not just going to be able to drop bangers and get out of it that way, it seems, because I'm not hearing that on 224. Lips, Hips, Kiss, I like the DJ scratching choice. I think the hook is just fine overall, just kind of like a basic R&B song. It feels a little empty to me overall. I like the harmonizing, though, at the last minute from the group. Tell Me, I think that one has very silky drums, very smooth once again. But again, that's what I'm hearing with this. I'm hearing smooth. And I don't know if I necessarily associated Kiss of Life with smooth to this point. I expected pop and personality, right? You think of all the virality around the group in the past, year plus, particularly around Natty and Julie, right? I feel like Natty's vocals are hard to pick out sometimes on this project. Julie still stands out to me overall in 224, just because I think her voice is the most unique of the four compared to the others, and also her rapping, of course, is very easy to notice. But I feel like Belle and Natty and Haniel, like they feel so interchangeable vocally on this project. I think K-Bye, also one of the highlights, I guess you could say. Hip hop song. Julie's flow is good once again. I like her inflection on the track, and the chorus is the most memorable aspect of the song. Painting, I think this one's pretty solid, but also unmemorable. Slide, though, as I said, my favorite song. It definitely has the catchiest lyrics. I think the Kiss of Life personality is really great in that first verse. The wait right here, something's in my drink, got me feeling weird. Like vocal lines I think are great. That especially because it's like a back and forth. Like I want to hear more of that type of energy on their music, and that was a great example of it. Beats also about as up-tempo as you get on all this project, which again is a lot more subdued overall. Heart of Gold, it's a slower song. I think the vocals aren't bad, honestly. I have another Julie rap verse here, but the beat is just a bit too plain for me. I think this song probably could have been a lot better. And then Think Twice has a kind of an acoustic start to it before picking back up. One thing that stood out to me overall was Natty has 2 writing credits on this. Julie has 1. Belle has none, though, and Belle was always talked about as the songwriter of the group, the one who has the most songwriting experience. I was surprised to not see her name in any of the credits. So yeah, Kiss of Life 224, I'd say overall it's underwhelming to me, given the really high bar they had set for themselves musically from 2024, and even their debut project in 2023 as well. I think this is my least favorite of all those EPs to this point. I think that's pretty obvious. And what's next for that group? Again, it remains to be seen. Obviously, they just toured a ton last year, so I don't expect them to go back on tour right away necessarily. But I'll be curious to what degree they promote this music. Again, dropping out of KCON LA was certainly a big choice. What's to come? Will there be another EP in the fall sometime, and they'll just try and get going back into the swing of things? Will there be a more dedicated grappling with all the controversy? I'm not sure. Let me know, though. How are you feeling about Kiss of Life? Are you still looking forward to the music? Did this music do it for you? Didn't really do it for me. Let me know. And for more music reviews, more K-pop reviews, subscribe. And I'll see you next time. What's up, Womack Nostalgia? Dave here, the review of Predator, Killer of Killers, the new animated anthology film out on Hulu. The 6th Predator film, 8th overall if you count the Alien crossovers. This is also the 2nd film from director Dan Trachtenberg following 2022's Prey. And Trachtenberg will be back helming Predator Badlands, releasing later this fall, which will be getting a theatrical release after Prey infamously was direct to Hulu. Killer of Killers, though, makes a lot of sense on the animated side of things to be a streaming release and really feels like a nice piece of, lore building for fans and keeping the franchise going. I think this was a really fun streaming drop. Predator Killer of Killers is a lot of fun for Predator fans. There's fun Predator lore and Easter eggs here for the faithful, but simply put, this is a action-forward Predator story. 3 distinct tales that end up connecting by the end. Rotoscope style animation fits the series like a glove because this is just pulpy and violent as we come to expect from the franchise. A Predator versus a Viking, a Predator versus a ninja, and a Predator versus a World War II pilot. All 3 of these stories work on their own, and the build-up also is pretty satisfying. The animation also provides an opportunity for a lot of creativity and a grand scale that we haven't been able to see before from Predator action, and I'm certainly more excited for Predator Badlands now than I was 2 days ago. The first story, The Shield, is 841 AD with the Vikings. I love the lead protagonist who's trying to avenge her father. I love the shield blades, using shields as a weapon as well as a shield was pretty cool, pretty visually engaging. And right away you get the positioning of the tech reliance that the Predators have and using that tech against them. In this first story, it's the handheld pulse, cannon type propulsive weapon that the Predator is using. I love the anchor use as the fight concludes as well. The second story, The Sword, is Japan 1609, Tokugawa shogunate era. We have these 2 brothers that come at odds. One leaves the family, jump ahead 20 years later, and the estranged brother is trying to plot or sneak in to kill his brother ascending the throne, we assume, before they have to team up to fight against the Predator. And I think what's always fun too with these stories is watching the Predator just kind of observe the human action, taking it all in stealth mode up on high before they jump in to, clean it all up, which is always so funny too, because the Predators are doing this for sport, this hunting, this killing of killers, right? And yet they're always ambushing and have a huge tech advantage. It's kind of amusing that their cultural desire to be these great hunters, even though there's never a fair fight when they're doing it. Once again, you have the tech reliance the Predator used against it. In this case, its own bombs with its handheld chain launcher. I think the castle complex was pretty visually cool as well. This story has almost no spoken words at all, but still I think is pretty powerful in what it's trying to convey here. And then lastly, we have The Bullet, which starts off in Florida in 1941 before we get shipped off to 42. With a mechanic, John Torres, who's very talkative, is a huge shift from the previous episode. And I think this is one that's probably the hokiest, right? For starters, the whole chain of command with the U.S. military was very unrealistic with how that was conveyed. But it was cool to see Predator action, human versus Predator, when it's all shipbound. Literally, trying to fly against the Predator's ship and all its abilities and using its heat signature reliance against it. This one also was pretty cool, all things considered. I thought flying through the flak as a way to damage the Predator ship is pretty clever. And then you get to what's been alluded to, because each of the stories was ending with seeing the lead protagonist with some kind of collar around them. We realize that these survivors who have all defeated a Predator are getting picked up and captured by the Predators and returned to their home planet or, somewhere out in space. And there's this grand arena, gladiator fight set up where they're going to fight to the death and then have the privilege of fighting the lead king Predator guy. And they're able to team up despite the language barrier that they all face. And I think they survive and escape in a really fun way. And at the end, you get some of the really fun Easter eggs where we realize that the reason they're there, the reason that a Viking, a 1600s ninja, and a World War II pilot, they're all alive. They've been put in like some kind of cryo sleep of some kind. And obviously this is setting up a future sequel with this front. I think a Predator animated franchise makes a lot of sense. By all means, make more. Cool. But then you get like some fun references, one of which is the lead character of 2022's Prey, Naru, played by Amber Midthunder. She's there in crowd. She's already been picked up. There's a possibility to do more with her character, which would be super cool. There's also some nods to Alien vs. Predator, which might be returning. The crossover might be coming back. Also, just in terms of general Predator lore, John Torres, the weapon he's given in the arena, is the flintlock pistol from 1715, which was, of course, famously given as a gift, as a sign of respect in Predator 2, and we actually learn about the origin of that pistol in Prey. And now here it is once again, a weapon that moves throughout time, similar to the cat's paw dagger in Game of Thrones and whatnot. So yeah, I think this was quite satisfying, and I think visually certainly up to the task, had a lot of creativity in its choreography, and yeah, Predator, let's keep it going. And ultimately I think the success of Predator as a franchise moving forward is going to lie with Badlands and its theatrical release and the ceiling of that, right? Like we saw Alien Romulus have a lot of success last year. And these are not like monster billion-dollar franchise type grossers, but they're successful and dependable, and we'll see now. Can Predator do that? Because the last time the Predator was theatrically released was the Shane Black version in 2018, which did not do well. So lots riding on that movie, but I'm looking forward to it. Dan Trachtenberg at this point is kind of like the creative arbiter, the soul of the franchise. I think he's done a great job thus far, 2 movies in. We'll see what the third one does in the fall. Let me know, though, what you think of Predator Killer of Killers, what you like most about it. And for more movie reviews, subscribe. And I'll see you next time. What's up, Womack Nostalgia? Dave here with a review of The Phoenician Scheme, the latest film from Wes Anderson, starring Benicio del Toro, Mia Triapleton, and Michael Cera, alongside a who's who of supporting players, as we've come to expect from Wes Anderson films. This is Wes's third film of the 2020s, following The French Dispatch and Asteroid City from 2 years ago. The film premiered back at Cannes earlier this year and is now slowly expanding into semi-wide release from Focus Features. The Phoenician Scheme is my favorite Wes Anderson film of the 2020s. I think this is a deeply emotional film that has everything you come to expect from Wes Anderson. Great performances, stacked ensemble casts, impeccable, detailed dollhouse-style cinematography, production design, camera framing. All of those trademarks of Wes Anderson are here, of course. Storytelling-wise, it's a lot more straightforward from the plot perspective than we've come to expect recently. That being said, it's still a very busy plot, perhaps a bit too much going on. Story-wise, though, the Benicio del Toro character, Corda, and his relationship with his estranged daughter, played by Mia Triapleton, is very impressive. And I think the journey those characters go on and what the movie is trying to say about being a parent, loneliness, reconnecting with people, whether they're your family or other people you know, it's a lot more of a pointed message than some of his other films that felt a bit more, kind of above the fold. Screenplay wise, it certainly doesn't hold your hand. It's very quick, fast-paced dialogue, communicating lots of information, and when you combine that with frames of picture that have a lot going on in the foreground and background, a lot to hold your attention, grab your interest, it's a movie that certainly will warrant repeat viewing. Once you have a better handle on all the plot that's being fed to you, you can kind of sit with those themes a bit more. I'm always impressed with what Wes Anderson is able to communicate, whether his best movies or his movies that are only so-so. There's always so much here, and it's always very ambitious. And when you combine that with Wes Anderson's trademark one-of-a-kind style, there's just a lot to recommend. Obviously, if you're not a Wes Anderson fan, or if you've grown tired of some of his trademarks and stylings, this is not the movie for you, because The Phoenician Scheme is not changing anything up about that. It's just another spin on what we come to expect from Wes. Like I said, I think it's my best of my favorite of his of the recent 3. The Corda character, I think, is an amazing performance from Benicio. He has to carry so much of the movie as this kind of titan of industry business tycoon surviving assassination attempts. And he has these grand plans and ambitions, and you contrast that with his desire to make his estranged daughter, Lysol, this aspiring nun, make him her heir, even though he has a bunch of other sons that he's closer with already. And I think Mia Trailpton does such a great job playing off of him. I really was unfamiliar with her work to this point, but I thought she was like the revelation of the movie. Michael Cera is also great as Bjorn, this person who's hired in the stead of Korda. And Cera, somehow, this is his first Wes Anderson role, but he's right at home with this material. I was actually kind of shocked that I realized he hadn't been in a Wes movie before. I think he does a great job. Of the supporting players, I mean, there's a ton. Riz Ahmed, Tom Hanks, Bryan Cranston, Richard Ayoade, Jeffrey Wright, Scarlett Johansson, Rupert Friend, Benedict Cumberbatch, Hope Davis. Most of those we're familiar with in Wes performances before. I think Richard Ayoade as this, freedom fighter, militant type figure makes a big impression. I think the stuff that worked the least for me was this kind of like, it's the one moment where the movie isn't linear. It's where we go to these like, Are we in heaven? Are we in some like metaphysical, like religious space? This biblical trope as they're presented in the credits. You have F. Murray Abraham and Willem Dafoe present. Charlotte Gainsbourg, Bill Murray, they're all there. I didn't totally connect with, I think, that like more metaphysical stuff in terms of Korda's relationship with that. Maybe if, with another watch, it would come to me a bit more. I think that's the thing that you could probably brush up against the most. But the main story, chapter by chapter basis as Korda and crew are enacting the titular Phoenician scheme and working on financing and settling debts and assuaging potential enemies and all that. That's all pretty fun. Different settings, different pieces of conflict as the movie progresses. I think all that works pretty well, especially as it comes to the head at the end. I was laughing a lot seeing a kind of completely out of nowhere like game of horse basketball game of horse featuring Benicio, Riz, Tom Hanks, and Cranston. That was not something I expected. Pretty fun. Cumberbatch also makes a pretty strong impression towards the end of the film. But yeah, it's another melancholy Wes movie story-wise, and I think the core relationship between father and daughter is the appeal of this movie at the end of the day. All the other Wes window dressing, we come to expect that. It works really well in this movie, but really I think thematically, this is a film that I think you can connect to really easily, and I certainly think it's probably a bit easier to grasp thematically than, say, Asteroid City. But yeah, let me know. What did you think of the Phoenician Scheme? What did you like most about this movie? Of course, there's so much to talk about, so much to like, so much to think about and process when it comes to any Wes movie. What most grabbed you about the Phoenician Scheme? Let me know. And for more movie reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. What's up, Womack Nostalgia? Dave here with a review of Ballerina, the latest action and thriller film, John Wick spin-off film starring Ana de Armas. This is the 5th film in the John Wick franchise, the first spin-off, of course. We know another spin-off is in development, starring Donnie Yen's Kane from John Wick Chapter 4. Ballerina, though, is taking place in and around the events of John Wick Chapter 3, with Ana de Armas recasting the ballerina Eve character from Chapter 3. And this is a film that went into production in late 2022, initially wrapped in early 2023, but then reports of extensive reshoots in 2024, thus the long wait for Ballerina to come to our screen. Originally directed by Len Wiseman, he of Underworld and Die Hard 4 fame, seemingly had the movie taken away from him as producer, and John Wick co-creator Chad Stahelski came in to helm those reshoots. I certainly had a lot of anticipation for the film because Ana de Armas seems like a good fit for this kind of movie. Of course, she was absolutely outstanding in her scene-stealing, one-scene role in No Time to Die a few years back, and also was pretty good on the action front in Netflix's The Gray Man. So I really had no doubt that her, and of course her stunt double and all the help with all that, would be able to be an effective action star. And expanding the John Wick world, we already, I think we're kind of expecting this. Keanu Reeves has said that he really can't play this character too much longer, if at all. He is in his 60s already. They've already tried to spin off a little bit with that Continental TV series that didn't go too well. There's animated work coming as well. So the John Wick brand is expanding from Lionsgate, and Ana de Armas seemingly a good fit for it. Ballerina is an effective and successful John Wick spinoff because at the end of the day, the action set pieces in this film are up to the franchise's high standards. While the first half of this film is typical origin story, yada yada, nothing too outstanding, honestly pretty poor, once we get to the second half of the movie, the action really picks up in fun and creative ways that feel right at home with the highs of this franchise. Ana de Armas up to the task as an action hero in this world. Keanu Reeves is in the movie just enough, making a strong impression as the mythical Baba Yaga. The villain and detours of Norman Reedus don't really work at all, but if you just put a lot of the story to the side and focus on the actual kinetic action you're seeing on screen, it's pretty entertaining. It's giving you what you want. Of course, Ana de Armas is Eve, coming under the stewardship and training of Angela Houston's director character from Chapter 3. Jennifer Lawrence, Red Sparrow, Black Widow from Marvel. It's a similar kind of trope as like the reformed, young girl turned hyper killer type trope. Like, it's pretty familiar, and a lot of the window dressing with the cults and the gangs and the world of John Wick and the Continental and things like that, that's all here. Nothing really too great. I mean, nice to see Lance Reddick one last time in a cameo role. Ian McShane also here in a small role. The best part of the first half of the movie is definitely a club fight scene, which we got a great one in John Wick Chapter 4 already, but they're just fun, settings for really intense action. We had an awesome one on Netflix's Havoc with Tom Hardy a few weeks ago. And that one, involving like an ice bar, the classic, bisexual lighting, Anna really like fighting for the first time in the movie. It works pretty good. Everything with Norman Reedus, though, and his role with his daughter, I think all of that was incredibly poor and confusing. And, we know this movie was reshot a lot, and this movie was originally adapted from a Blacklist script that wasn't affiliated with the John Wick franchise. So this was kind of an amalgamation to, graft a spin-off of the existing script. But Norman Reedus, I think, was completely unnecessary in the movie, to be honest, and everything is kind of a bit turgid until we get to Hallstatt, Austria, the Alpine Lake Village, which is a real place. And then once we just kind of get into the fighting, I mean, there's some creative stuff here. I mean, a really, I think, fun and amusing one-on-one with plates being smashed on each other. Eve upping the stakes with using grenades of various types to kill people and survive this great extended fight inside this armory bunker setting. I think everything with the grenades was really fun. Also the blocking, of course, like this is where like it seems so clear that Stahelski was involved, helming these action scenes because they look so good. The motion, the energy, the flow of the fighting, what we come to expect from John Wick. So we're getting these stakes continuing to be raised across this, really long extended fight at the village. And, again, we're seeing things we haven't seen before. It's feeling creative. It's working. Ana de Armas is a badass, right? And then you get something like truly transcendent for the franchise, which is Ana de Armas wielding a flamethrower and frying these fools. And it's great. And then they up the ante where like the last head henchman gets a flamethrower of his own, and we have a flamethrower on flamethrower fight, and it's tremendous. And of course, we look back on John Wick Chapter 4, a movie I love. Check my review if you missed it. You have John Wick using the Dragon's Breath fire rounds in a shotgun from a top-down perspective, the way it was filmed. Obviously, that was truly transcendent, spectacular action filmmaking from a few years ago, and this feels like kind of like the epilogue to that. And I think it was really great. As I said, the villain I thought was pretty poor from Gabriel Byrne. Just like the character itself, just like doesn't really matter, And I think while Ballerina isn't as like super like stepped into like the lore and the rituals of this John Wick underworld the way like Chapter 3 and Chapter 4 particularly were, you get kind of like a lot of it still, but it's like more surface level. It's never really been that interesting to me, the greater John Wick world building. Like, it doesn't get in the way, but I don't think it's anything like super great. But yeah, I mean, I think just for what this movie is as a, again, plot perspective, pretty straightforward, but the action standard is still high, I think it delivered and was an effective spinoff. Of course, box office wise, this is probably going to be in like the $30 million range. It's important to note that you want to compare this box office to like more traditional, like, female led action thrillers, not actually comparing it to the John Wick box office. And that would be the case too if we get in the other spin-offs too. It's hard to really treat them on their own terms, but that's what we should do. Interestingly, I think this came out more recently, but Keanu Reeves was unable to accept the Star Wars role of Master Soul on The Acolyte because he was unable to adjust his filming schedule for his role in Ballerina. I thought that was a kind of interesting bit of a Hollywood history, and as a result, of course, Lee Jung-jae played Master Soul. I think Keanu, as a wise, pensive Jedi Master, is possible. Obviously, Keanu was John Wick, pretty iconic at this point, and hopefully they didn't beat him up too much because he doesn't have too much to do in Ballerina, but still makes a strong impression. But yeah, obviously, looking forward to that Kane spinoff because I think Donnie Yen was tremendous in Chapter 4, the best character in the movie. That'll be awesome. And then John Wick Chapter 5, I mean, we know it's out there. Just, it doesn't seem like Keanu is quite as willing to go off into the sunset as he ages with a character the way, say, Tom Cruise has been with Ethan Hunt in Mission Impossible. So I probably would... I would bet that they will make a John Wick Chapter 5, and that would probably be the final one. But I don't know. It doesn't seem particularly close, right? There's not a whole lot of movement in terms of anything super concrete. But yeah, Ballerina, I liked it. Ana de Armas, I think she's been a little cold on the movie front. We just haven't had anything like too big. Obviously, Gray Man, not super well liked. I thought she was still pretty good in it. Ghosted on Apple was a big mess, big flop. No Time to Die, a few years ago now, right? So I think this is a movie, of course, this was supposed to come out already, so it's been a little bit. But I think she acquitted herself well with the physicality of the role. And looking forward to seeing more from her. I think she's a great screen presence. Let me know, though, what did you think of Ballerina? Do you agree it's a successful John Wick spinoff? What did you like most about it? Let me know. And for more movie reviews, subscribe. And I'll see you next time. All right, that's going to do for the pod this week. Next week, a lot of stuff, once again. The How to Train Your Dragon live-action remake. Interesting. We'll see how that goes. Celine Song's past lives follow with Materialists. Stacked cast there. New music from Islet and AJ Tracy. I might go see The Life of Chuck as well. So make sure you subscribe. YouTube.com/nostalgiapod. Linktree.com/nostalgiapod. See links below. Get the best of 2025. Spotify post link below. Let me know it's good. And I'll see you next week.